Hey guys, so I was requested to make a video on a 2D character controller. This is, I think, one of the scenes I set up myself for testing. So yeah, cool. So let's see what the end result is. The end result is a character, which is an empty, that has a character controller script on it, a rigid body 2D, and a capsule color 2D. It can be any collider, like a circle or square, doesn't really matter. You can see I set it up so that it is smaller than my image. And of course, if you go in here, so character, models, you can just change that to sprites, doesn't really matter. And then in here, you can put your actual sprite, which has a sprite render and a color and so on. Cool. So you don't have to do it this way. You could just make a sprite and then put the script and or rigid body and so on there. But this way you can change the sprite and the sprite location. So right now the sprite's bottom side, like where the feet would be, is where this empty is. Cool. Or where the actual center or root is. And you do that by changing this from center, which is the center overall of everything here, all the elements, to pivot, which is the actual root center. Cool. And I guess I can make this script from scratch, but I can show you what the end result is here as well, which you guys should at least know about. Cool. This one has some more goodies and stuff in it, but don't worry too much about it. So all you have to worry about is 3 things for a character controller. There's maybe a bit more, but maybe 4 things. Let's check it out, right? So the first thing is you of course have your variables. These are for your rigid body to affect your rigid body. That's how you move. Those are your actual movement speed and jump force values, ground check, transform, and your layer to separate or filter which layer you can jump from, so that you don't jump from your, or like detect your own character. Then you have your setup, your initialize section. For me, I have an instance equals this. Don't worry too much about that right now. But the important part is just your rigid body. This get component allows us to get the rigid body 2D from the character itself. And that's because this character, the empty, has the rigid body on it, right here, rigid body 2D, and it's the exact same place where the character controller is. And so that's why we can do this. We can just say, just get the rigid body 2D on the character itself. The next thing we have, it counts in both of these, but we can separate them. So we can say here, we are trying to set input, right? So we have our move input float, and they're setting our horizontal axis to it, which is A and D or left and right arrows. And also we have our jump key here, which is calling the jump function. So it's very simple. You can like visualize these as individual blocks of rules or things. And the next thing then is actually moving it. So here we are setting or like moving the character. So rb.velocity equals the vector 2, our move input times the move speed, and then we're just setting the current y velocity. We don't need to change or anything. We can just choose a default. And then jump is similar, although this is slightly different than what I showed, I think. This is rb.velocity equals new vector 2, and then you have you're setting the x to the current, and then you have a jump force times a multiplier. I think I saw this somewhere else, but there are different ways to do it. What else? Yes, I think we did this with the Unity event. I'm not sure if you guys are up to date with that, but that was for like the jump pad of the Unity event. But anyway, so let's make should I make a new character controller? It is all right here. Let's make a quick one so you guys can get an initial setup of it. So I'm just gonna say create C# script character controller to the new. So that there's a new one for me. And I'm going to disable this one just so that we don't have it there. Remember that prefabs exist wonderful things. So we have this character controller 2D new, and all you need to do is you have your bars, your input, and then your actual logic, right? Very simple. So the first thing you need is, and I'm going to do serialized field, which is, it gives you the ability to have a private variable that's not accessible by other scripts, but only this script. It's more lightweight. And it just makes it so that you don't have unnecessary stuff like public. So we need a float for move speed. We need a float for jump force. Then we're gonna have input. So float input x is fine. We need a reference to our rigid body 2D. So rigid body 2D RB. I mean, I guess I could do that as well. It can be this long thing as well. I don't think it likes that. I'm just going to change it to RB2D. That's fine. So we need that. Then we also need a well, this we can put up here. So I'm going to make a space so that there's a space between them. I'm not going to do header stuff now. Then serialized field, we need a transform for the ground check. I'm just doing everything now instead of like at the end. We need a layer mask, and that would just be ground layer. Cool. There's something wrong. No, there isn't. Okay, so that's basically all we need. If we need something else, I'll come create it up here. Then in our input, we're gonna go to update. Oh, we also have a different section called init for initialization. But let me do the update first. So an update, the first thing we want to do is the input, right? So we're gonna say that input x right here equals input dot get axis. So this axis and axis raw. I'm gonna somehow do axis because then I'm doing something that's slightly different than what I usually do. So axis raw will just be raw. If you're not pressing a button, it's 0. If you are pressing a button, it's 1. There's no in between. Whereas axis will internally lerp it from 0 to 1 and 1 to 0. So it'll move slowly or progressively from 0 to 1. The reason I don't do it usually is because I like the direct feel that get axis raw gives me, and you can also manually lerp it yourself to get an interesting feeling character controller if you really wanted to. Get axis, and then we're just gonna say horizontal. That's spelled correctly, I think it is, and that's that for the move input. Sorry about that. The next thing we need to do is, our jump. So I'm going to say if, and then once again it's input, but then dot get key down. So you get dot get key down, key up. If it's dot get key, it'll always check for it over and over and over. So whatever you put in this code bracket in the if statement will always fire. Get key down will run once when you click down. And then up is the same if you let go. So with up, if you click, nothing will happen. If you let go, it'll happen. So these are both once, and this is continuous. So that's why we need dot get key down. I forgot about a variable. We'll add it now. But yeah, so this is of course key code dot space. Cool. And then we need to also check if it's grounded, because if we don't, we're gonna jump infinitely. So I'm just gonna say is grounded. And then we can call a new function called not that jump. Cool. So these are missing. Let's add them. So I'm just gonna do. Sorry about that. Above this, it'll be bool is grounded, and then jump. You could just copy this, and in the logic, paste it in. Of course, you need to make it void. And now we can do jump logic. Cool. Before I do that, let's actually make let's do the awake, right? Awake, it happens before anything else in the script. So start also happens first in the script, and it happens once, just like awake. But start happens when a script has already compiled and it's running the first time, whereas awake is running when the script is still compiling. It's part of that compilation process. So you can initialize variables and stuff like that before anything else to be used. So that's why it's important to say, I like to assign, our rigid body. So you can just say equals get component, rigid body 2D. If I'm going too fast, remember, you can pause. Don't worry about it. All right, now we have this rigid body 2D, and we can use that for everything. So let's actually first set up this jump because we already put it here. So now what I can do is I can say rigid body 2D dot add force. So the example I showed had was setting the rigid body dot velocity and making a jump that way, and that's fine. That works literally the same, but this one just gives you, I guess, a bit more control. Kind of, not really. Depends on what you want or how far you want to take it. So we need a force. I'm just gonna say transform dot up, then it will always be local. You could also do vector 2 dot up, which will be global. So this means that no matter what direction the character is facing, it'll always jump up. If you're doing it, you want to do it local, you can just transform dot up, which is lowercase transform. So the difference is uppercase transform is a variable, right? So that's going to be like a parameter or something. Lowercase transform is referencing this script's transform, which would be the character. Cool. And that's what we want. So this character's up value. Then the next thing we need is the force mode. So it's force mode 2D.impulse so that it happens once. There is something missing here though, and that is our jump force. So it's transform.up, which should basically be 1 in the up direction. And so we will jump with a force of 1. But we don't want that, we want more force, so it's times jump force. There we go. And that's how simple jumping is. We haven't set up is grounded yet, but we'll do it now. So now, here in the logic section, we can just say fixed update. And there's two things we want to do here. That's move logic, and is grounded logic. All right, so move logic is pretty simple. It's rb2d dot velocity. We're setting the velocity directly. Equals a new vector 2. And so this obviously has an x and a y axis. So the y can just be rb2d dot velocity dot y. So we're basically just telling it, like, take the velocity dot y, the y velocity, feed it back to it. This is basically a default value, or, we're just saying we don't want to change it. All right, cool. There are many ways to write this as well. There are ways in which you're not forced to have a y value, and then you would still have to give it this y. Because if you're setting the velocity directly, so let's say you have 3 axes, and you're setting the velocity of x and z for movement, then y would be overwritten and won't function properly. Alright, so for this, sorry about that, we would need our input x, which is a float. And then we also want a speed value, of course, because once again, this would be -1, 0, or 1. And so you would move, but not very fast. So we just need our move speed. And that's that. We basically have it working. That's how small this script can be and how fast it can be. We just need to set up our isGrounded logic, of course. So isGrounded is a bool. So we're going to set it to something. So you could say physics2d. And physics2d is a class from Unity that have many different functions that we can use. all of these, which are many. So we want to use an overlap circle. You can do a normal raycast down, set the length of that raycast. It'll work fine. But if you're doing a circle, then there's a bigger area that can detect if you can jump. And I can visualize that as well. But let's first set this up. So you need a point and a radius. Very simple. The point can be our ground check that we created up here. Ground check. Dot position, of course, because transform doesn't it contains position, but it also contains rotation and scale and so on. So that's why we're specifying position. And then we have our radius, which I don't think we set up. So let me actually, I don't think we set something like this up last time. Let's do serialized field, float, and then overlap circle radius. This is usually very small values. That's our radius. And then the last thing is we need our ground layer. You can go about it, but it won't really work all that well. And we still need to set up our values, of course, like in the editor, our variables. But that's basically it. You have your variable section, your initialization section, your input section, and then your logic section. I want to share something else quickly so you can see what an overlap circle does. And that is on draw gizmos. So this is a built-in function that runs on its own logic. It's just like update and start and so on. But it runs on update for gizmos. So what we can do is we can say gizmos dot, let's choose one. Draw circle maybe? Draw sphere. Is there maybe a gizmos 2D? No. Okay, draw sphere. Is there maybe a 2D version? No, there's nothing like that. Alright, cool. And we need to set a color of it first. We don't need to, but dot color equals color. You can choose anything. Maybe green. That could be cool. Alright, and what you need to feed in here is a center, an area, and the radius. So we already have our ground checked up position and our overlap circle radius. So what this will do is it will give us a visual indicator for where this ground check is and how big it is. Alright, so that's basically it. Let me just do this. Gizmo. I'm gonna close Steam because I'm getting notifications, which is not fun. Alright. What's this? Crisp. I'll run it after this. That's fine. Okay, so we shouldn't have any errors or anything like that. This is a very simple script. And what I can do now is make a new player. So I'm gonna make an empty called player. You can call it anything you want. Player is fine. And then we'll obviously need an empty for the sprite. So sprites. And an empty, well, actually we don't need an empty here. We can just do 2D object sprites. I'm gonna make a square. Why not? And then this square, what color is cool? Like a teal. That's not really teal. It's fine. Advice I can give you for choosing colors for anything is there's this imaginary box like around here. If you can see where I'm choosing the color. If you go outside of that box to these edges, then it's not really a realistic or nice color anymore. So it's better to stay in like a box like inwards. So I would, for example, go like there and maybe select a color that's like there-ish. That looks kind of cool. It's like a soap thingy. Cool. And then I'm gonna just make the gizmo smaller. Cool. Alright, and what shape do I want it to be? Maybe it is like a short little dude. What you can actually do is add more stuff. more shapes. So maybe this one will be like the same color. Sorry, I'm wasting time on this now, but it's fine. Gonna choose the same color, but make it more blue, like way different. And then just shape it to be like maybe there. Something like that. All right. And then if I want eyes, I could probably, I guess, I'm not seeing it happen. There we go. He's like looking to the side, maybe. All right, now I have this cutesy character. So the next thing we can do is give it the ground check transform or empty and place it at its feet or so. Something I'm going to do is place it a bit higher. Maybe there. And I'll show you why now. So if we go to a player, we need to add the script. So it's going to be character control to the new. It's going to complain like that because of our gizmo. So the first thing we need to do is drag in our ground check and then give it a radius. And I can see there's this 3D object here. And to fix that, it's not that complicated. It's going to be draw wire sphere instead of draw sphere. That's just so that it's not an actual 3D object, but actually just the outline. There we go. Now we have an actual visualization. Now you can see what an overlap sphere is. This is where the text to hit the ground. So what I can do now is I can bring it up a lot and then make it pretty big, you know, maybe like that. And then if I move it down more, maybe something like that. Maybe it's a bit too big, right? But you get the idea. It's pretty cool. It's a bit big because we're going to add a, what should I call it next? Collider. Okay, so then we have to do, what we have to do is add our rigid body 2D. And all you have to change here is to change it from discrete to continuous. And we also want to add, for me, it's going to be a sphere collider or a circle collider. Sorry about that. There you go. Reason being, you don't need a square collider for a circle. Square collider for a square. Circle works better because of how it interacts with the ground and stuff like that. So if you have, it just works better when you're hitting an obstacle so that it doesn't get stuck, it glides over it and so on. But that's also your choice as to what you want to do there. So it's a bit big, so I'm going to make it slightly smaller. And that's because I don't like having the collider as big as the model with the sprite. Just so that there's some leeway when, like, let's say we're gonna add enemies, right? And they hit you like just a pixel of your character. You're gonna be like, how did that happen? But if you make it a bit smaller, then there is a bit more leeway with that, as well as with like hitting obstacles and stuff like that. So I'm gonna make it 0.45, and then you can change this offset here for the actual location. So minus 0.05. Cool. Now that's exactly there. All right, our setup is going great. Maybe this green wasn't a good idea, but it's fine. All right, let's check what we have to add next. So we need a move speed, maybe like 4, and a jump force, maybe like 9, something like that. Doesn't really matter. And we just need one more thing, and that's the ground layer. So right now we do have a ground, like for me. For you, we could either do tile map or just add a quick little sprite with a box color 2D on it. And I already have a ground layer, but if you want to add one, you can click on any game object, go to layer, click on add layer, and then in here you can add one like this. Cool. And then in your player, all you have to do is change this to ground. That's it. So the player doesn't need to be on the ground layer. It could just be any layer. And in fact, for now, I think for always, change your player to the player tag. Just always do that, because that's useful for certain code and stuff. All right, so this should just work. There might be errors, there might be bugs, but we'll see. Okay, I'm moving and I am jumping, but there's something wrong. Oh, test script. That's a different script. Oh, that's okay. I'm just gonna do this. Don't worry about it. This character controller 2D doesn't exist anymore because I disabled it, and now it's complaining that that isn't there. Can try to fix it as well, but I'm not gonna do this video. This video is on the character controller. Alright, so you saw my character rolling around like that. All you have to do is go to constraints. It might look like this. Click it open and click on freeze rotation for Z. And so now it should just work. You can see that it doesn't like move immediately. It kind of is slow and then moves faster. And yeah, it feels pretty good. All right. One thing you can do, yeah, this feels very sluggish with that get access setting instead of get access raw. But one thing you can do now that I also recommend to always do is to make a new folder for materials, because I can feel it being pretty sticky on the floor. And then create 2D and then physics material 2D. This will just be player physics match. Cool. And then just drag it onto both the circle collider and the rigid body. If you have a box collider, same thing. It doesn't change. Okay. And now we can just change this to be 0, 0 or 0, 1 or whatever. They both go from 0 to 1. It doesn't go above 1. Alright, cool. Trying to feel it. Yeah, that feels better. Alright, nice. We have a character controller. So one more thing I want to show you guys. It's very simple, so don't stress too much. I'm going to go to Window, Package Manager. And then you want to go to the Unity registry. And you can either type it in here in this box, or you can just do what I do and just, you know, go down and look for it. And oh, I already went past it. It's here, this one. I just want to show you something that I realized yesterday. Cinema machine. So if I type it in, or if I just type in Cine, you'll see there's a Cinema machine or Cinematic Studio. It has a Cinema machine and other things in it. But don't worry about it. Just use the one that says packages, not features. Cinema machine itself. Cool, just install it. And what we can do with this is, instead of putting the camera directly onto the player, or instead of, you know, doing it through code manually, we can just use this machine, this cool system, and we'll have a camera follow that just works. All right, cool. So yeah, our camera, like, I don't have any scene organization, but that's because, you know, quick setup. I have a main camera here. So what I'm gonna do now that it's imported is to right click in the hierarchy, go to Cinema Machine, we have this new pop-up here, and then click on Virtual Camera. I guess there's a 2D camera as well, which I haven't looked at yet. Oh, it's the same thing, but let me show you. So if I add a Cinema Machine virtual camera, the difference is that the virtual camera has aim as well as a body, whereas the 2D camera doesn't have aim. Or I guess it has it, but it's set to none. So it's literally the same thing. So it doesn't matter which one you choose. But 2D camera is what I chose here, so that's fine. We could just say player follow cam or camera, doesn't really matter. And this will become our new camera. So this main camera isn't really a thing anymore. It's just like a backbone. It's the foundation. Whereas this, oh, why is it always like that? This will now be our actual camera. But you don't move it around when moving it in this scene. You can just leave it as is, where it is, and so on. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Okay, cool. So we can drag our player into this follow section here, and it'll fix our error. And you can, for example, now adjust the lens ortho size here. That's technically the zoom in and out. So I'm gonna place it like there maybe. And then if you open up this body, that's where you can actually move it around and so on. So we're gonna go to third person follow. And then we have two important sections we can adjust. The first one is damping and the second one is shoulder offset. Shoulder offset, I'm just gonna zero mine out, allows you to move it in any direction you want. And it'll always be that will be the default position of the camera. So I'm just gonna do you could do this if you wanted to, but that would be weird. So maybe just a bit down like that. I'll run it out to 1.5. Cool. And then this damping section, you want to always set it to 0 because we don't have that dimension or that axis. And then the higher this value is, the less it'll follow the player. The lower the value is, the more it'll stick to it. So for left and right, 3 is probably fine, and for up and down, 0.8 is fine. But play around with it. Don't just copy mine and be like, all right, that's cool. You know, change it up. Have fun with it. So up and down, it's still following it pretty closely, but there is that slight delay. And you can have a better look at it here. You'll see that this gizmo here, which represents the camera, is not moving exactly according to this player here. So if I jump, you can see how it is jumping up to that camera and then falling away from it. Very nice. And then left and right is similar, where it will, you know, not follow it exactly, but close enough. And it just makes it feel nice, you know, more dynamic. All right, cool. And then I'll show you guys one more trick we can do. And that is, you can see that the player, when he falls, is pretty, boring, I guess. All right, so let's do one more thing. We're basically done. You can also add noise. Just show you noise. Basic multi-purlin is channel purlin is the default one, or the only one. And then you can add wide angle mild. And we'll just show you before I continue. Now we'll have a bit of shake. Cool. But I don't want that. Where is my character's face? That's quite concerning. Maybe that's because I changed this. Or maybe this sprite is in the same layer, yeah. So I'm just gonna put these sprites at 1 both. So that's important in 2D. With everything, the tile maps, the player, the enemies, they all have this thing in the sprite renderer called order and layer. So if you want to separate stuff, you're gonna have to keep that in mind. So now my character actually has his cute little face, his eyes. But I'm getting carried away now. I want to say something else. Cool. So in the player, let's go to the character controller, and we're gonna make it not feel as floaty. So we need 2 more variables. I'm just gonna add a spacer here again. And let's just see. Yeah, so we can do serialized field float, and that will be the fall multiplier. And then we'll have a serialized field float, and that will be the y velocity start falling, start fall. You can call whatever you want. This just means that this is when it will start forcing the player down. And the reason I'm doing it is because sometimes you want it to fall faster than it currently is. And you want to also adjust of this when it will happen. You can choose 0. So when the velocity is below 0, that's when it's falling, of course. So you can say when it hits 0, then force the character down. But I like to do it at 3 or 4, so that while it's still in the air, it's already pulling it down. It makes it feel like you have more control. So this is what these 2 values are. And like I showed in class, you can do a range. So for the multiplier, I would do 0.1 to like whatever value you want, maybe 10. 0.1 because 0 doesn't really work, because 0 times something is 0, of course. And then for this one, I'll also put a range in, and that range can be, I guess, -5 to 8. I'm just giving it big values or big ranges. All right, so we want to do this in update itself. So in update, whoa, I just clicked something weird. Cool, you can just do if, and then we can say rb to the velocity dot y is below, and this is where we want to give it this y velocity start to fall, right? And then we don't need curly brackets, we can just do it right here. So then we can say if it's below that, then rb to the dot velocity equals physics 2d, a lot of 2d, dot gravity times, and then here's where we want to do kind of maths. So there's two ways to do this. Either, I mean, you could just take fold multiplier and then put a minus in front of it. Let's try that. And then we also say, oh, sorry, time, delta time. That's just so that it happens over time. And yeah, it's just that it happens over time according to gravity as well. So gravity is like 9.81. So we're basically saying like you're already falling at the speed a person falls at, but we're also adding more to it, the same amount, I guess. So it'll be gravity time to the power of 2 times our fall value, I guess. All right. I'm not good at math, so I'm not going to act as if I know what goes on there. So I'm just going to put the fall multiplier to 3, and this maybe to like 3.5. And then let's see if it actually works. The reason we put the fall multiplier to minus... Okay. Alright. That's pretty fun. It's falling, but not fast. Let's see. Maybe I should do it the way I usually do it. Times -1. Or just -1. Oh, maybe that is... Oh, I thought that minusing it would work. I was just trying to test it out, but I guess it doesn't. It's fine. No, it still falls slow. Why? Unless the values are wrong? Why is this not on? Alright, cool. Let me see what's going on here. I mean, it's literally the same as every other controller I've made. Let's see if I even made it here. I did not. Let's see. So the rb2d dot velocity. Maybe it's dot y for both. Oh, you cannot set that. Okay, cool. And that you cannot set that either, because that's just one value. Oh, I know why it's happening. I made a rookie mistake. Alright, so remember when I said that, for example here, you have to give it this y value, because if you don't, then you're basically overriding it. So what's happening here is I'm overriding this value here by doing it here. And that's because this update is happening before this fixed update. And in fact, it's happening more. It's happening twice as much. Because fixed update is for physics, and it happens slower, or no, it happens less or updates less than update. So therefore, this is, it has more control. It has more control over it, I guess. So, what you have to do is you just have to give it a plus equals. Because equals is overriding it, but plus equals is saying add on to it. That's something I forgot. Such a small detail that's like a complete difference. But hey, what can you do? Alright. If this works... Nice. That feels way better. Cool. That's the video. That's an entire character controller for 2D. And you can do way more if you want. But I'll make a separate video, I guess, in the future, whenever, for more interesting ways to set up a character controller, or things you can add, like coyote time. Coyote time means that if I fall off this edge, on this edge, I can't jump anymore. But coyote time is basically giving me some leeway, so that when I exit off of this edge, I can still jump for a little bit, like 0.2, 0.3 seconds still. And it just makes it feel like the player has more control over the game. Okay, cool. Let me show you something. You can make it really feel like it's pulling down on you if you put this Y velocity start fall very up. And then you can make it even stronger by just giving it more, like a higher value. And then it will really feel like it's pulling down. But yeah, pretty cool. Okay. Hope you guys found it interesting and learned from it. See you guys in class and stuff. Okay.